Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Savage. I'm the CEO of VAAXA Cybersecurity, Division of Firstworld USA. Here today with our Director of Enterprise Sales at Firstworld, Rich Pomper. And we're also joined here today the Cisco team, Kevin Switzer and Thomas Mann.
Yes, hello. My name is Kevin Switzer. I'm a technology consultant specializing in various solutions of Cisco in cybersecurity.
Yeah, and I'm Tom Mann, and I also cover cybersecurity. I'm an engineer, do a amount of hands-on and testing, and Kevin and I work hand in hand together. I've actually got 32 years of IT experience. I've been in the industry a while and have seen much over the years.
All right, so thank you for that, Kevin and Tom. Today we're here to discuss how Cisco can be a part of your CMMC journey. First, I'd like to discuss what Firstworld and VAAXA can offer to defense contractors and others who are looking for assistance with their CMMC journey. Firstworld has been based in Brookline, Mass. For over 30 years and has a lot of experience in both IT sales and service. We have experience in a wide variety of industries and emphasize Cisco technology in our partnerships with small and medium enterprise business and government organizations. We offer Cisco wireless, routing, and core switching solutions, and we recently launched a new division, VAAXA, to offer robust Cisco security and technology to our client base. With VAAXA, we provide preparation gap services to those who are working on becoming ready for their assessments, for those dealing with federal contract information, or also known as FCI. There are 17 controls that will be required to be met as a part of CMMC Level 1. For those of you working with some form of controlled unclassified information, also known as CUI, your environment that stores and transmits that data will be required to meet 130 controls under CMMC Level 3. We can help you with implementing these controls as well as documenting and providing the evidence for when it comes time to be assessed. We will soon become a C3PO with the CMMC accreditation body, which will authorize us to work with provisional assessors and trained assessors when the training becomes available. While we can't provide both consulting and assessment services to the same clients, for those of you who have already got a handle on the CMMC pre-assessment process, you can look to us in the future for gaining your CMMC certification. Lastly, we have constructed an ecosystem that allows us to work with and support certified environments. CMMC is likely to require recertification every 3 years at a minimum, or if there is a major change in the environment. Means that the contractors will need to continue to stay compliant. There's also difficulty around many managed service providers and the tools that they use. Are they compliant? Can they store CUI? Or if someone submits a ticket with CUI in it, who hosts the data? At VAAXA, we have taken a different route and implemented internally hosted and maintained systems in a CMMC Level 3 compliant environment, which will be certified when the time comes. We also work solely with other organizations that provide CMMC level environments, such as Cisco and our Security Operations Center with Blackpoint. Now, as many of you know, Cisco has developed many products that can help fulfill a number of the controls and requirements of CMMC. As you can see, the broad spectrum of products and services from Cisco can create a unified system that can address many of the CMMC practices. As we turn it over to the Cisco team, they will go more into detail about some of the products listed here. In recent months, Cisco has received a large uptick of questions surrounding their Duo Federal and WebEx for government platforms in relation to CMMC. Did you know that many of their other products can also be utilized? So at this point, I would like to hand it off to the Cisco team, Kevin Switzer and Thomas Mann. They will be able to address how Cisco is working with defense contractors along with what solutions they are providing.
Okay, thanks a lot, David. As we mentioned, my name is Kevin Switzer. I'm going to get us kicked off and run us through probably the first half of these solutions. So first, I want to talk about Cisco Talos, which is the back-end research team operating at Cisco. and then we're going to dive right into some solutions by Cisco specifically related to these topics. We're going to talk about DNS layer security, multi-factor authentication or MFA for secure access, endpoint protection, detection, and response. And then I'll turn over to Tom, who's going to go deeper into network security, things like firewalls, network analytics, identity enforcement, network policy, remote access, and then we're going to mention some free trials that we're currently offering. So as mentioned, Cisco Talos, and for once, we actually do not have an acronym here. Cisco Talos was the Greek god of protection. So it actually does not say anything, so don't have to worry about trying to memorize that. And what this is, it's anywhere between 250 and 300 full-time threat intel researchers operating in various data centers around the world, so that there is 24/7, 365 types of coverage. And their goal is to be able to mitigate 99% of all threats before they're even able to enter your systems. And there's all kinds of crazy, impressive statistics that I could run through for the next 45 minutes, but I won't waste your time on that. The way this operates is basically a giant network as a sensor. So all the different Cisco security solutions that are operating in production, whenever it recognizes and blocks a threat, it's feeding that information back to Cisco Talos saying, yeah, we saw this, we blocked it, it's still a current threat, they're still using it, so we need to keep on top of this. And then also, if it recognizes something new or different, or different version of a threat that was already known, it's also going to feed that back to Talos, so then those engineers can jump on top of that and pick it apart and develop a fix for it, a signature for it, and then they're going to push that down to all the Cisco security solutions that are operating out there. And of course, they're operating not just in this realm, but also working with people on the dark web, with other deep security firms to detect things that are up and coming, and hopefully getting fixes out there and blocks out there before they actually even hit publicly. So as this slide was already shown, I just want to call to action that, for example, access control, AC, identification authorization, IA, we are going to reference those types of things at the beginning of each solution. So just want to give you an idea. This is Cisco Umbrella, which is DNS security. And this does apply to CMC levels 1 through 5 and fits into each one of these categories in various ways. And put this more as reference, we are going to share these with you so you can refer back to them. And also looking through the CMC documents, it did seem most relevance to guideline 3.192, which is implement domain name system filtering services. And the real purpose of Cisco Umbrella, and by the way, this used to be a private company called OpenDNS. Cisco acquired them and has rebranded that as Cisco Umbrella. We could go several years back, and typically this was the picture of how typical architectures operated. We would have about, give or take, 80% of traffic would be internal, so mostly internal. And now, and about 20% would be internet. But now we're seeing that is almost a complete flip. We're seeing much more internet traffic. A big part of that is because a lot of people have to work from remote locations for the last year or so. So we're seeing a lot more need for internet type of protection. And where Umbrella fits, we refer to this as the first line of defense. So we all know DNS is the internet phone book. So whenever we're going out to the internet, we need to do some type of DNS lookup to get where we want to go. And the public DNS servers that you get typically from a service provider, these are not really policed, if you will, but Cisco certainly does. Talos is going to scrub those entries for known malicious sites and remove those or block them. So whether you're operating from the main office or from a branch office or even as a roaming user or client, you're still getting the same level of security through the DNS. And we have the benefits of blocking malware before it's even able to hit, because we know those actual IP addresses of the command and control servers. We're able to block them before we're able to make contact with them. And one other side benefit to all this is actually your internet will operate a bit faster. And some key features of Cisco Umbrella. Obviously, we are initially focused on DNS layer security. And Cisco has also introduced a good amount of CASB, or Cloud Access Security Broker type features into umbrella. So you're actually able to get very granular with specific named applications. So just for example, if you wanted to, you could block all social media if you wanted to, or just allow Facebook, for example. So we really have a granular lockdown on that. Should you have actual need to provide this, it can actually provide a level 4 through level 7, a complete cloud-delivered firewall through a VPN tunnel with encrypted traffic, and also features of secure web gateways, so we can actually do full URL and proxy filtering, whitelist, blacklist, or automatic, depending on what your policy wishes. And of course, interactive threat intel. So both from the perspective that Cisco Talus is going to be scrubbing these DNS entries so that it's going to be fully automated, and also from your web portal access, you're actually going to be able to look and see what specific users or groups of users are accessing. So if there is a threat, we'll be able to get down to patient 0. And with Cisco Duo, this is going to be our multi-factor authentication solution. And this can apply to CMMC levels 1 through 5 as well. And it's going to fit each one of these specific categories. And where I found it to be most relevant is requiring multi-factor authentication for network access to non-privileged accounts, and also requiring the addition of multi-factor authentication for remote maintenance sessions. And some of the great benefits of using Cisco Duo multi-factor authentication, it pretty much instantly integrates with all apps on the device. The user can self-enroll if they wish, and very quickly, very easily. And the authentication process is actually very simple. One of the ways the whole industry is moving is trying to get away from passwords, so we can actually have passwordless authentication. Many multi-factor authentication solutions out there will provide, either email, a text message, a phone call, whatever that may be, which works, and it's valid, but it can be a bit annoying and time-consuming if those don't come through right away, or perhaps you mistype that actual code in. What Cisco Duo is going to actually do, the app is going to put a push to the device, so you can simply say accept or deny, yes, I wanted to connect here, or no, I didn't. And it's actually going to use the device security. So, with the typical phone, it's going to be able to either use your thumbprint or use your facial recognition or whatever it may be. And 3 different categories, I'd say, where this is really targeting for security. And it's going to be focusing on people who are trying to steal identities. So obviously, they're going to be trying to obtain usernames and passwords. This is going to mitigate that. Targeting specific applications. So yes, they would love to be able to put a version of an application on the device that would have something malicious and exploit potentially outdated types of applications, and specifically targeting device weaknesses. So different areas that this mitigates. We're going to be taking a deep look through Duo of out-of-date endpoints. So looking at things like, hey, your iPhone, for example, you haven't updated the iOS in a couple of versions, and there are some security risks. So either we're going to limit your connectivity or block it entirely. Obviously, it's a big concern if you have a lost or stolen device, trying to keep anyone who obtains that device maliciously from accessing the actual applications and data on that. Also misconfigured type devices. So if there is not properly security put on that device, or also if it's jailbroken, things like that. Under privacy risks, obviously we want to prevent exposing and collecting personal data. Accidentally wiping a device, that would just be a very difficult time for the actual users, and different types of compliance. So what we really do with Cisco Duo, we're going to verify the identity of the user for certain, verify the health of their devices. So again, that goes to, is this a current device? Does it have an updated operating system, and things like that. Control which users and devices gain access. So yes, A type of user, so I need A type of access to certain applications, but not to the B type of user applications. And the idea is to protect all the applications all of the time. And just to make sure you are aware, Cisco Duo does have 3 tiers of licensing to it. The basic is going to be MFA, and it's going to provide your multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, unlimited applications. Cisco Duo Access gives you multi-factor authentication policies based on user and device risk. And Cisco Duo Beyond tier is what's going to give you granular device policies based on device trust. So that's going to look into things like if you potentially downloaded something on your device recently, and it could be potentially malicious, which will actually tie directly into Cisco Secure Endpoint, formerly known as AMP, or Advanced Malware Protection. This solution applies to CMMC's levels 2 through 5, and whereas most relevant was in IR category 2999, establish a policy that includes incident response. So what Secure Endpoint overview really does, it is a cloud-managed and subscription-based software as a service. It is compatible with Windows, Mac, Linux, these varieties, as well as Android and iOS. It is a lightweight client connector. It does have options, and this is really important, for public and private types of cloud deployment options. And it provides continuous analysis and retrospective security, which I'll tie into here in just another minute. And as we had said, Cisco Talos, their goal is to block 99% of all threats. Now, there are these types of advanced evasion techniques that typically are able to get around just about any type of security. So we have fileless malware, environmentally aware malware. So if you're uploading to a sandbox and checking this file, it can actually tell it's in a sandbox, and it's not going to appear malicious. Polymorphism, which is, for example, a .doc document, changes itself to a .exe, which is an obvious type of malicious activity, and exploit legitimate processes. So the way we're going to perform with Cisco AMP, the first thing it's going to do is what we call a cloud lookup. So all of the known bad files that are out there, we perform a SHA-256 algorithm against the file, which spits out a digital fingerprint. We're going to check that digital fingerprint for all known bad files. And obviously, if we know it's a bad file, we're going to block it. If we believe it's a good file, we're simply going to allow it in. Now, if it does not show up on our list, however, something in it appears fishy or odd, that's where we're going to do our sandboxing and upload it to a cloud location and pull it apart and see what we can do to get it to launch its malicious activity. And if that comes clear, it's going to allow it onto the device. Now, this is where most malware type of solutions stop. But with Cisco Secure Endpoints, we actually do continuous monitoring. So it actually keeps track of the file location, where it came from, where it went, and also if that user happens to share that file and where it gets shared to. So let's say we download a document and we share it to 5 people, and then 2 weeks later, it does a polymorphism and tries to speak out to a known command and control server. Cisco AMP is going to pick up on that. It's going to obviously block it from happening. But then also, we're going to be able to track where this file has been, where it came from, so that we're going to be able to prevent anything like that happening again. Also, now we have a way of clearing it out. And also, we're now able to offer endpoint isolation. So if this happens and we have a clear indication of compromise, we can actually remove that particular endpoint from the network until we actually know what we are dealing with. So in this retrospective capabilities, first it's going to focus on the different types of users and where it's been. So if we have a problem, we know, okay, these users have specifically had this file on their endpoint device, and we need to focus on these. Also, what applications does this particular user have access to, and this file potentially could have gotten into and affected? And also, where, what locations, what groups possibly have been affected? and what is the scope of time? How long has this been going on? So that way we know the how, we know the origin, we know the progression of the threat. So we have a clear way that we know what we have to mitigate and clean up. Any questions on these solutions before I turn it over to Mr. Tom Mann? And Tom, I'll hand you the ball.
All right, I just grabbed it. I'm selfish. I just snatched it away. All right, so what we're going to do next is talk about some of the network security solutions, really, that are going to also apply to CMMC. And the first of those is actually going to be Cisco Secure Firewall, which is a rename. They had been calling this Cisco Firepower Next Generation Firewall, but they've really tried to standardize now on a Cisco Secure naming to simplify their product line. This solution will apply to CMMC levels 1 through 5, and it covers a wide variety of areas. There wasn't any specific one to call out, like with some of the ones Kevin's was looking at. It does cover a lot of different areas of AC, actually, when looking at all the CMMC categories. Now, their firewall solutions are really a lot different than they were years ago. They've really moved into full next generation capability and beyond at this point. So that they have world-class security controls that allow you to control policies centrally and very consistently, and then give you visibility of what's happening across all the firewalls. But it's not just that. That's something that obviously should be there. It's the fact that how integrated the solution is now too. So you have firewalls, which I'll talk about some of the use cases in a moment. But the fact that they integrate in with other Cisco security solutions that I'm going to talk about today, like their network analytics product and their policy enforcement products, but also products like SecureX Threat Response, for instance, which is a solution that helps you do threat hunting, for example. So a little more on those security controls. A lot of it is based on the features and capability, and then that central policy to control it all. So Cisco has a leading intrusion prevention system that is on the firewalls, and you could use that in firewall mode or a dedicated IPS mode. And then also malware defense using the same technology that's in the secure endpoint, their AMP advanced malware protection is also available inline on the firewalls, and that includes the ability for the firewall to send things up to the sandbox, so that if something goes through that wasn't caught on the initial one-to-one looks, the sandbox can come back and give a warning or an event that a file made it through, and then you need to mitigate that. You also get a lot of different reporting and real-time monitoring with all that visibility that allows you to look at what risks are happening using impact flags and other ways to sort the events coming in. So you could really more quickly prioritize things you need to address. Now, we have Talos listed here, of course. So Talos is tying into many of these products. There's a whole threat feed that the firewall takes advantage of. And before you even do your policies to block your own things, that threat feed could block all kinds of different attacking networks, which also ties in to really the security platform, SecureX, that's tying all these products together. Now, when they say all these products, well, the Umbrella, Secure Endpoint, and some of the other ones I'm going to go over shortly all tie into the same platform and could share information with each other. Now, from a validated use cases, Cisco Secure Firewall really works in a lot of situations. So of course there's Internet Edge, which is quite popular. Most Internet Edges are going to need a firewall, but also scenarios in data centers where that could be private cloud or just data center where we want to separate traffic, maybe based on workload, or if it's a multi-tenant situation between tenants. Branch offices, there's cloud and virtual versions. You could put the firewalls in dedicated IPS mode or firewalls with IPS and all those other features. And of course, remote access VPN, another very popular solution that these can handle to really tie in your network security. I'm not going to dive into all the little speeds and feeds of all these, other than to mention a few things. I mean, they do have a full product line of firewalls. What's not on here too, I'm going to mention too, is well, of course, they have cloud-based ones in the major clouds, but they also have virtual. So like for VMware and KVM, you could also do virtual threat defense firewalls, Cisco Secure Firewall, and have those running, in your data center or different areas. But then this lineup of firewalls here, like the 1000 series, is 4 different models, which scales from a desktop model all the way to larger models that would support SMB to medium to large branch offices. And then you move into the 2100 series, which is going to be for enterprise and larger branch offices. And then 4100s would be for large campuses, large enterprise, extra large enterprises, and data centers. And then finally, on the high end, the 9300, which you see is modular. It actually takes server blades in it. That's actually for high performance data centers and service providers once you get up to that level. But it all depends on the need and performance of which ones you choose. But every one of these little product lines has multiple model options within there. So one thing to note too is where Cisco is sitting in the industry. And Forrester has their Forrester Wave, and they have one for enterprise firewalls, where Cisco came in #1 in most of the categories in the Forrester Wave. So with zero trust and workload protection and threat intelligence, and all these different areas, microsegmentation, firewalls as a service, that came in #1, and we're #1 in market presence. So they did quite well on the Forrester Wave, and this is from 2020 specifically, and that's available publicly. They earned a perfect 5 out of 5 for product vision. So this is, a far movement from where they were, say, 7 or 8 years ago, where they had fallen out of the top positions. So they've really integrated a lot of solutions, made acquisitions to really get where they are now, and have all the solutions working together nicely. Some of the last areas about the firewall is management. They do have multiple managers. There's cloud managers, local on-box managers, but also for the larger customers and probably for government, they would probably be using the Firepower Management Center, which is the on-premise manager. So this one has the most robust visibility and reporting of all their managers for the solution. So it gives you total visibility in what's going on across all the firewalls. There's threat analysis, easy for me to say, and real-time threat management. It also could tie into their threat response solution, SecureX Threat Response, which is a threat hunting environment that is cloud-based. It doesn't hold data itself when you're threat hunting. It, at an API level, can pull telemetry data from the other solutions when you're doing a threat hunt. So that's no additional cost, and that could be utilized with Cisco Umbrella, Cisco Secure Endpoint, the firewall solution, all can integrate into that. Also, the network analytics product, which is the next topic, also integrates in, which is the next topic. So Cisco Secure Network Analytics. This solution also applies to CMMC as a requirement to have some sort of network analytics solution. And it applies to 2 through 5. It's not needed in level 1. And these are the different categories that it does hit. Many of its features and functions go really across multiple categories. Now, you get this solution to really give you total network visibility is one of the reasons. So the idea and understand what conversations are on the network, not just going through the firewall. You know, the firewall can't really see everything, all the traffic within a network, unless you had every VLAN or every port on a firewall, which is not going to be practical. So you could be alerted to what's going on and respond quickly to changes on the network or anomalies or malicious traffic. This really sees everything. And it can integrate in, as you see in the bottom, with really all aspects of the network. Now, if we go a little farther, this dives a little deeper into what's going on. Now, in case you haven't heard of the name of this product, Secure Network Analytics, the reason is this product, if you're already familiar with it, was called StealthWatch up until recently. And if you go into it, it's still called StealthWatch. So this is the new naming they came out with a couple of months ago for StealthWatch Enterprise, which is Secure Network Analytics, which isn't a bad name. It is what it's doing. So you can see on the lower right, it's going to collect data and pull that data in from the network. So from switches, wireless LAN controllers, even endpoints, and gather all that rich telemetry and aggregate that onto your on-prem databases. And then it can do its own analysis using behavioral monitoring, which would be a change in traffic. So for instance, if there's a certain traffic pattern for most users, and then a couple of users start downloading a huge amount of data or uploading a huge amount of data, even worse, that would be a change in behavior, and that would be an immediate flag. And then you could take action with this solution. There's also multi-layered machine learning, where you get a combination of supervised and unsupervised techniques, where it's going to analyze the traffic itself and see if there's any malicious things going on using machine learning. And that technique can also be then applied to their encrypted traffic analytics. And this is a huge feature. So more and more traffic out there, people are doing encrypted traffic, which can be a problem if hackers take over one of your machines and they're using encrypted traffic to do remote control or to go out to command and control servers. The idea is the secure network analytics can see malicious traffic even without decrypting the traffic. So you don't even have to decrypt it. It can tell by the patterns of malicious traffic that they're malicious, even though they're encrypted. And then you can flag it and block it. And then all this does tie back to Cisco Talos also. Yeah, if someone could mute that open line, that'd be great too. All right, let's move on. So with the secure network analytics, it's giving us that huge amount of visibility. These are some different use cases that are available. So the use cases is an additional site out there Cisco has where you can actually go look at all the different use cases that you can do with that collection. So network visibility, it's been doing for years, but newer things over the last 3 or 4 years would be the threat detection and forensic investigation type of things and incident response. So it has a lot of intelligence it didn't have years ago. It's interesting now, this is more along the same with those use cases. I'm going to flip over to that. And I clicked on that just a few minutes ago. This actually allows you to take a look at individual use cases based on category. Like if I want to look at compliance, for example, and look at particular activities, and each one of these then will have an abstract that explains exactly how this solution works in that area. Maybe I want to look at forensic investigation or so on. So those are really quite helpful when trying to detail specific things this can do. All right, now let's talk about some of the integrations that the secure network analytics actually has. It can integrate with another Cisco solution called Identity Services Engine, which I'm going to talk about after this. I have to talk about one first. But the secure network analytics is gathering all kinds of information from the network, learning it as a sensor. And then Cisco's used this term for years, the network as a sensor and enforcer. The way that works is if secure network analytics detects something, it can tell Identity Services Engine to take action on it and reconfigure the network to block certain traffic that's actually happening, turn off ports, or change VLANs, of a particular user or device. And also it goes both ways. Identity Services Engine is devices connect to the network and log in. It gathers information on the device. It profiles them in many ways. And it can share that with Secure Network Analytics so they both get a better view. So they work hand in hand together. Now, Cisco DNA Center, we're not really talking about today. We don't have time for every solution. This is really their software-defined networking for the campus network solution, and that also ties into Identity Services Engine. Although I won't be diving into that solution today. You could use Identity Services Engine with or without DNA Center, but DNA Center has a lot of configuration you could do and use the policies of ICE at the same time. That's a whole nother conversation. This is another example of the detection and response capabilities. Now, the term network detection and response actually is a new term in the industry. It's been around a little while, like Gartner, for instance, uses this term for this class of product. So network analytics and being able to respond to it is a category, and the solution of StealthWatch or Secure Network Analytics and ICE together give us that network detection and response capability. So you can see what's going on and then set policy and remediate based on that using these two solutions. Now, 7.3 is a very new version. It came out recently. It actually added the capability, and that's 7.3 StealthWatch or Secure Network Analytics. Its new capability is it can tie into policies inside of Identity Services Engine or ICE, adaptive network control, and you can fully automate the controls then, so that if StealthWatch sees something happening, you could take advantage of those policies in ICE and automate and automatically quarantine devices on the network that are causing problems. That's a very powerful feature. All right, and that brings us to the next section. Before we move on, were there any questions anyone had at this point? All right, I'll move on.
Hi, Thomas.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a question. The question was, how do you work with GCC High?
Yeah, that I don't have the answer to off the top of my head. We'd have to check into that. So we'll have to get back to you on that answer. So I guess we'll move on. I don't have an answer to that one. So with Cisco Identity Services Engine then, the next piece, we've got CMMC levels 1 through 5 are also addressed here. And then again, it's a wide array of categories, not any one category, because Identity Services Engine is almost like a Swiss Army knife. It covers a lot of different capabilities. It does policy control, but it does a lot more than that. And I'll address some of the use cases this does too. So first of all, the way this works, again, DNA Center is optional. It can fully tie in, or it could use traditional networking. You have devices out there, so that could be users. Those are the user accounts coming in on different devices. Or you could have Internet of Things type of devices. Here we have phones, security cameras, things like that. We want to make sure we can control where those devices go and make sure they can't go anywhere if they're malicious, and control based on who they are and what devices they are using ICE. And as they connect in, that could be connecting through VPN gateways, wireless LAN controllers and access points, switches. ICE then can control that through its policies, basically. And those policies optionally can be tied into DNA Center. It can then also build up an identity of the user, that's the identity in the Identity Services Engine, based on information it gets from other solutions. So that could be Active Directory or LDAP. And in the new versions now, it also can tie into mobile device managers and enterprise mobility managers, and tie in via SAML to multi-factor authentication solutions, and build an identity, and then it'll have its own identity profile for all the users coming in with its own information about the hardware that the user's on and the stuff coming from the other identities. And then you can use that information to control where users go. It also can tie into StealthWatch, which is the secure network analytics, and other third parties actually that are part of Cisco's Security Technology Alliance program. And there's a large membership there. So you could use someone else's solution that can identify maybe vulnerabilities on the network or some other security feed, and have ICE take advantage of that also. So one example would be rapid threat containment, a specific feature of ICE. So in this example, Jim here is going to VPN in using Cisco's AnyConnect VPN client. And he gets full access to the network based on his credentials and his machine he's on. His machine is running AMP for endpoints, or now called secure endpoint. And then, there's an enabler in there that ties them together. AMP runs separately, but AnyConnect is aware of it. Jim then gets infected at one point, and possibly it got by secure endpoint. Maybe it's a brand new infection, but AMP says there's something going on here. It's detected it. Maybe you couldn't quarantine it for some reason. And it tells the Cisco AMP cloud, the AMP cloud tells ICE to quarantine the device at the VPN. Whoops, went too far. So even if we couldn't quarantine it on the device, we could quarantine it right at the VPN by ICE telling the VPN to quarantine it, maybe put it on a different VLAN due to its posturing capability. Yep. All right, now that does tie into Cisco AnyConnect. I thought I'd talk about that for a moment. Remote access VPN is very important. AnyConnect, many people know about the fact that it's Cisco's VPN. It's very popular, but it does more than just VPN. It's very modular and has a lot of other modules in it, like Network Access Manager and their posture module both work with Identity Services Engine to control access to the network. Posturing allows it to see if the machine is compliant. Is it outdated? Does it have patches? Does it have a certain certificate on it if you want to do that? Does it have antivirus that's up to date or endpoint protection that's up to date? ICE could do all that also. Notice there's an umbrella module. So Kevin earlier talked about umbrella. That could fully plug in here. In this case, it's when they're on the VPN, they're turning off umbrella on the client, and then they're turning it on when they disconnect for the VPN. That's an option that you can configure either way. Notice down here, network visibility module. This module actually ties into the network analytics product. So if you enable this module on AnyConnect, there's no graphic for it. It works in the background. You can collect full telemetry right into their secure network analytics product from all the client devices that have AnyConnect on it. And that's if they're on the VPN or off. If they have that module loaded, all their network traffic can be collected. So not only from your switches and VPN gateways and access points, but even all the endpoints that have that on there. Now, one more section on Identity Services Engine, kind of the customer journey or use cases you'd use with it. So it could be used for wireless. So in this case, you're going to control who gets access to corporate wireless, who gets access to your maybe a BYOD wireless, if you do that separately. And if there's a guest wireless, this has full portal capability. We could make a rich, beautiful looking guest portal and secure that and separate that from the main network. So full control over the wireless users. It also gives you full control over the wired users so that we can secure all the ports. So you can't just plug into the port and get on the network. We want the port to authenticate the device. So that's commonly done with 802.1x, or you could use a MAC address bypass. And quite often you combine that with profile. And so something like a network printer, maybe I profile that that's a printer and I add that MAC address into ICE to allow my network printers in, where any laptops and desktops are going to be doing 802.1x as an example. But then that gives me visibility in what all the devices are, what hardware, what operating systems through the profiling. I could go beyond that and do posturing with ICE, where I can get a full hardware and software inventory and then check the hygiene of the device. You know, is it compliant with updates? Is it compliant with antivirus or endpoint protection and things like that? And block them based on that information and the profiling information. You could also do segmentation with ICE. Now, this is getting a little deeper. But they have a feature they're called scalable group tags based on the ICE profile of the identity of the user and device combined. Using that rich identity information, you could control which parts of the networks they can go to by controlling all the switch ports and access points on the network. So that, for instance, if I'm in a particular ICE group, I can only go on particular ports on particular switches based on that, so that you're not just relying on host-based security. You could fully segment the network based on who they are, and it doesn't matter what VLAN they are or what IP address. It's all based on identity. And then finally, that rapid threat containment, which I covered on the previous slides. So this is all the different use cases, and I'm lying actually. There's more use cases than these. These are just the main use cases of ICE. There's actually more, but we don't really have time to go into all the use cases because ICE does a lot of different, identity control and network admission control features. All right, so that's all the main features. I don't know, anyone else? Kevin, did you want to talk about the trials here?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Cisco Umbrella, Cisco Secure Endpoint, and Cisco Secure Access by Duo, Cisco is offering a free trial period for any one or all three of these if you would like to run these in your demonstration or production environment. Very easy to get this established and set up. And what I would ask you to do is just to reach out to your representatives, and they'll be able to set you up with the information on how to obtain these. There's a certain trial period, and if you really need to push that, they typically will say yes if we ask, but of course, obviously, there will be a limit on that time. And Tom, if you want to go to the next slide, I would like to mention that question about GCC High, which directly relates to Office 365 additional security parameters for Department of Defense customers. And I do not have an exact answer for that right now. However, I've already reached out to some of our folks that specialize on that side of things. So we will look into that and get an answer back to you.
This is Dave here. I just want to say with GCC High, there's certain solutions that you can use, like Duo Federal, to help you with your MFA portion of 365 and GCC High. You could also host a lot of these solutions that we talked about in Azure Gov and implement that as a part of your cloud package and target this more towards your networks and your endpoints and those kind of things.
All right, terrific. Are there any other questions out there? Well, it doesn't seem like it at this point. So if you guys want to finish off the last slide here.
Yeah, so this is Dave again. If anybody is interested in any of the Cisco products mentioned today or otherwise, as well as any of the solutions and services that VAAXA is offering, the information's right there on the screen. Questions, any trials, anything like that, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to help.
All right, terrific. I think we'll probably end here. So this might be a question for Dave about getting the people's slides.
Yes, we will get the slides posted on our LinkedIn as well as in our blog, and you'll be able to access at either location. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for attending today. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to future engagements and any discussions with any of you. Thank you.